My name is Eleanor Hayes, and at 73 years old, I thought I'd seen everything life could throw at me. I'd raised 4 children as a single mother after my husband died in a construction accident when I was 35. I'd worked 2 jobs to put them through college, sacrificed vacations to pay for their weddings, and spent decades being the family's rock. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for what happened on my grandson Tyler's 8th birthday. It was a crisp October morning in 2023, and I was standing in my daughter Sarah's pristine kitchen, surrounded by dirty dishes and the remnants of what should have been a celebration. The sound of laughter echoed from the backyard, where my family was enjoying Tyler's party, without me. How did I end up here? How did the woman who once commanded respect in corporate boardrooms become invisible in her own family's eyes? Well, let me take you back 6 months, because this story didn't begin with a birthday party. It began with a revelation that would change everything. 6 months earlier, I had just celebrated my 73rd birthday. It was a modest affair. Dinner at Sarah's house with my 4 children, Sarah, Michael, Rebecca, and James, along with their spouses and children. I remember feeling grateful to have everyone together, even though something felt different. The conversations seemed to flow around me rather than include me. When I tried to share stories about my recent volunteer work at the animal shelter, I noticed eyes glazing over. When I mentioned that I'd been taking computer classes at the community college, my son Michael actually chuckled and said, "Mom, why don't you just stick to crossword puzzles?" I brushed it off then. I told myself they were just busy with their own lives. Sarah was managing her real estate career and 2 kids. Michael was climbing the corporate ladder at his law firm. Rebecca was juggling her medical practice with 3 teenagers. James was launching his tech startup. They had full plates, but the signs were there, accumulating like storm clouds I refused to acknowledge. There was the time I called Sarah to ask if she needed help with Tyler's school project, and she said, "Mom, kids these days do everything on tablets. You wouldn't understand." Click. There was Michael's birthday dinner where they discussed a family investment opportunity for 20 minutes while I sat there, never once asking for my input, despite the fact that I'd successfully managed my own portfolio for decades. There was Rebecca's graduation party for her oldest daughter, where I overheard my daughter-in-law Jessica tell someone, "Eleanor's sweet, but she's really slowing down. We have to explain everything twice now." Slowing down? I'd run a half marathon just the year before. The most telling incident happened in July. I'd organized what I thought would be a lovely family reunion at a lakefront resort in Wisconsin. I'd spent weeks planning activities for all ages, booked adjoining cabins, and even arranged for professional family photos. When I announced it at Sunday dinner, the room went quiet. Then James cleared his throat and said, "Mom, that sounds nice, but we've actually already planned a trip to Cabo for the same weekend. The kids are really looking forward to it." "All of you?" I asked, looking around the table at faces that suddenly couldn't meet my eyes. "Well, you know how Cabo is," Sarah said carefully. "It's pretty intense. Lots of walking on uneven surfaces, late nights, spicy food. We thought it might be too much for you. Too much for me." The woman who had backpacked through Europe at 65 was now too fragile for a beach vacation. I canceled the reunion, lost the deposits, said nothing. That's when the real isolation began. The family group chat that I discovered by accident when Tyler borrowed my phone, and I saw the notifications. They'd created a new chat called Family Updates that included everyone except me. The conversations I wasn't privy to about holiday plans, school events, weekend gatherings. I started showing up to things only to find I was the only one who hadn't gotten the memo about changes. "Oh, we thought Sarah told you," became the family catchphrase. But I endured it all because they were my children, and I loved them. I told myself that every family goes through phases, that this would pass. I convinced myself that maybe I was being too sensitive, that perhaps I really was becoming a burden. The truth is, I was grieving the loss of my role, my relevance, my voice in the family I'd sacrificed everything to build. And then came Tyler's birthday party, the day everything changed. October 15th, 2023. I arrived at Sarah's house at exactly 2 p.m. for Tyler's birthday party, carrying the carefully wrapped remote control helicopter I'd researched for weeks to find. Tyler loved anything that could fly, and I'd found the perfect model. Not too advanced, but sophisticated enough to grow with him. Sarah answered the door wearing that smile I'd come to recognize, the one that was polite but somehow created distance. "Mom, you made it. Tyler will be so excited to see you." But Tyler was nowhere to be seen when I walked in. Through the sliding glass doors, I could see the backyard transformed into a wonderland. There was a bounce house, carnival games, a popcorn machine, and what looked like a professional magician entertaining a crowd of children and adults. "Wow, Sarah, this is incredible," I said, genuinely impressed. "Tyler must be over the moon." "He is," she said, but she was already looking past me toward the kitchen. "Actually, Mom, would you mind helping me with something? The caterer didn't show up, and I'm behind on getting the food ready." Of course, the caterer didn't show up. I followed her into the kitchen, where I found stack after stack of dirty dishes, platters that needed to be filled, and serving bowls waiting to be washed. Through the window above the sink, I had a perfect view of the party I wasn't invited to join. "I just need to get these sandwiches cut and plated," Sarah said, already moving toward the back door. "You're so good at this kind of thing. And honestly, you'd probably be more comfortable in here anyway. The yard is pretty crowded, and some of the other parents can be a lot." Before I could respond, she was gone, sliding glass door closing behind her with a decisive click. I stood there for a moment, watching through the window as Sarah seamlessly joined the party. I saw her laughing with other parents, watched Tyler run up to her with pure joy on his face, observed Michael flipping burgers on the grill like he was the star of his own cooking show. Rebecca was there with her family, looking effortlessly elegant even in casual clothes. James and his wife were by the bounce house, taking Instagram-worthy photos of their twin daughters. And there was the magician, commanding everyone's attention as he pulled a rabbit from his hat. I watched Tyler's face light up with wonder, saw him clap his hands and jump up and down. My grandson, the little boy I'd rocked to sleep as a baby, taught to ride a bike, read bedtime stories to every weekend until, when had that stopped? I turned away from the window and looked at the dishes. Dozens of plates smeared with cake frosting and sandwich remnants, cups with lipstick stains and juice residue, serving platters that had clearly been used and abandoned. For the next hour, I washed dishes and plated food while my family celebrated without me. Every few minutes, someone would duck into the kitchen to grab something. Drinks, napkins, more ice. And they'd say, "Thanks, Eleanor," or "You're an angel," before rushing back outside. Not one person asked me to join them. At one point, Tyler himself ran in, face painted like a tiger, high on sugar and excitement. "Grandma Elle," he shouted, using the nickname he'd given me when he was 3, and couldn't pronounce Eleanor properly. "Did you see the magician? He made a dove appear out of nowhere." "That sounds amazing, sweetheart," I said, drying my hands to give him my full attention. "Are you having the best birthday ever?" "Yes. Oh, and guess what? Dad said we're going to Disney World next month. Just our family, though," he added quickly, his 8-year-old brain suddenly remembering some conversation he'd overheard. "Because it's going to be really busy and crowded. Just their family. Of course." "That sounds wonderful, Tyler. You'll have to tell me all about it when you get back." He nodded enthusiastically, and then looked around the kitchen. "Why are you in here, Grandma Elle? Don't you want to see the magic show?" Before I could answer, Sarah's voice called from outside. "Tyler, come back out here! The magician is about to make someone disappear! How fitting!" Tyler ran back outside, leaving me alone with the dishes again. That's when I noticed the birthday banner hanging crookedly above the kitchen table. "Happy 8th birthday, Tyler," in bright, cheerful letters that somehow made everything feel worse. I was arranging sandwiches on a platter when I heard it. The conversation that would change everything. The kitchen window was slightly open, and voices carry in ways people don't realize. I wasn't intentionally eavesdropping. I was simply doing the tasks I'd been assigned while my family enjoyed the celebration I was excluded from. But then I heard my name. It was Jessica, Michael's wife, talking to Rebecca's husband, David. "I have to say, it was brilliant of Sarah to keep Eleanor busy in the kitchen," Jessica was saying. "Can you imagine if she'd been out here during the magic show? She would have spent the whole time explaining how the tricks worked, or telling everyone about some magician she saw in 1987, David laughed. Or worse, she'd want to help and accidentally ruin the surprise for the kids. Exactly. And don't even get me started on the photos. Last time she was in the family pictures, she insisted on directing everyone like she was Steven Spielberg or something. "At least she's useful for cleanup duty," came another voice. James's wife, Patricia. "I mean, we might as well put all that nervous energy to good use." Rebecca chimed in. "You guys are terrible, but honestly, it's so much more relaxing when she's occupied with something. I love Mom, but she has this way of making everything about her, you know? Like, we get it, you raised 4 kids. You had a career. You've traveled. We've heard the stories 1,000 times." My hand stilled on the sandwich platter. The mustard knife in my hand trembled slightly. "The worst part," Michael's voice joined the conversation, "is that she acts like she's still capable of everything she used to do. Like when she insisted on driving herself here today, instead of letting one of us pick her up. She's 73! What if something happened? Or when she keeps trying to give us financial advice." Sarah added, "I love her, but her ideas about money are so outdated. She still thinks you can buy a house for $50,000 and retire on Social Security." They all laughed at that. My children. The ones whose college educations I'd funded, whose down payments I'd helped with, whose financial emergencies I'd covered more times than I could count, were laughing at my outdated financial knowledge. "Speaking of money," Jessica said, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "Has anyone else noticed how she's been spending lately? Michael said she bought a new car last month, fully loaded, and she's been talking about taking some kind of photography course in France." "France?" Patricia sounded scandalized. "At her age?" "That's what I mean," Michael said. "She's not thinking clearly anymore. She's going to blow through her savings on these ridiculous adventures, and then what? We'll all have to support her." "Maybe we should talk to her about moving into one of those nice senior communities," Rebecca suggested. You know, where she'd have people her own age to socialize with. Activities designed for seniors. Professional care if she needs it. One where someone else can listen to her stories about the good old days," David added, earning another round of laughter. I set down the knife carefully, afraid I might drop it. My heart was pounding so hard, I was sure they could hear it through the window. "The thing is," Sarah continued, "I do feel guilty sometimes. Like today. I know it seems mean to stick her in the kitchen, but honestly, Tyler's friends think she's weird. Last time she came to one of his school events, she started talking to Mrs. Peterson about interest rates or something equally thrilling. Maybe we should just start having smaller celebrations," James suggested. "You know, immediate family only. It's not that we don't love Mom, it's just she doesn't really fit anymore. She doesn't really fit anymore." Those 6 words hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the edge of the counter, fighting to stay upright. "That's harsh, James," Rebecca said. but her tone suggested she agreed. But I know what you mean. It's like she's stuck in the past, you know? She keeps trying to be the matriarch, but we're all adults with our own families now. We don't need her managing our lives. Exactly, Michael agreed. And the constant need for attention is exhausting. Every conversation becomes about something she did or somewhere she went or some opinion she has. It's like she can't just enjoy being a grandma. Well, Sarah said with finality, at least we've figured out how to handle family events. Keep her busy with hosting duties, and everyone else can actually relax and have fun. The conversation moved on to other topics. Vacation plans, work promotions, children's achievements. But I'd heard enough. I stood in that kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of a celebration I'd been excluded from, listening to my children discuss me like I was a problem to be managed rather than a person to be loved. The worst part wasn't even the cruel things they'd said. It was the casual way they'd said them. Like my irrelevance was simply an accepted fact that they'd all agreed upon, without ever having the courtesy to include me in the discussion. I was a burden, an embarrassment, someone who didn't fit anymore. I looked around the kitchen, at the dishes I'd washed, the food I'd prepared, the mess I'd cleaned up while they celebrated without me. This was my role now. The hired help, the grandmother-shaped servant they wheeled out when they needed something done. Well, I thought, setting down my apron with deliberate care, if I don't fit in this family anymore, maybe it's time I found somewhere I do fit. I finished plating the sandwiches in complete silence, my movements automatic while my mind raced. Every word I'd overheard echoed in my head. But instead of breaking me down, something unexpected was building inside me. Clarity. For months, I'd been questioning myself, wondering if I was being too sensitive, if I was imagining the distance between us. Now I knew the truth. This wasn't in my head. This wasn't a phase we'd grow out of. This was their deliberate choice. I walked to Sarah's bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. My lipstick had worn off and there was a small stain on my blouse from the dishes. My hair was slightly mussed from leaning over the sink. I looked exactly like what I'd become, the family's unpaid domestic help. But as I stared at my reflection, I saw something else. I saw a woman who had run marathons, who had traveled to 6 continents, who had built a successful career and raised 4 children on her own. I saw someone who spoke 3 languages, who had learned to use cryptocurrency, who had started a blog about senior travel that had gained over 50,000 followers. I saw Eleanor Hayes, not the diminished version my family saw, but the real me. I fixed my lipstick, straightened my blouse, and walked back toward the kitchen. Through the window, I could see the party winding down. Parents were starting to gather their children. The magician was packing up his equipment, and Tyler was running around with sugar crash energy, trying to make the fun last longer. Perfect timing. I walked outside for the first time since I'd arrived 3 hours earlier. "There she is," Sarah called out, that same polite but distant smile plastered on her face. "Mom, you've been working so hard. Come sit down and have some cake." "Actually," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the yard, "I have something to share with everyone." The conversations gradually died down as people turned to look at me. My 4 children, their spouses, Tyler, and about a dozen other parents and kids all focused their attention my way. I felt oddly calm. This was the first time in months that I had everyone's full attention, and I wasn't going to waste it. "First," I said, walking over to Tyler and handing him my gift. "Happy birthday, sweetheart. I hope you love your present." Tyler tore into the wrapping with the enthusiasm only 8-year-olds can muster. When he saw the remote control helicopter, his eyes went wide. "Grandma Elle, this is so cool." "Look, Dad, it has a camera." Michael smiled tightly. "That's very generous, Mom. You really didn't need to spend so much." "You're right," I said pleasantly. "I didn't need to, but I wanted to. Just like I wanted to help with the dishes today, and I wanted to contribute to this beautiful party. Sarah shifted uncomfortably. Mom, we really appreciate— I'm sure you do, I interrupted gently. Just like I'm sure you'll appreciate my next announcement. I had everyone's attention now. Even the other parents had stopped their side conversations to listen. I've made a decision about my future, I said, looking directly at each of my children in turn. I've decided to move to Dubai. The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear the wind chimes on Sarah's porch. Finally, Rebecca spoke. Dubai? Mom, you can't be serious. Oh, but I am, I said, my voice growing stronger. I've been offered a position as a cultural consultant for a luxury resort there. They specifically requested someone with my background in hospitality and my— what did they call it? Seasoned perspective on life. This wasn't entirely true yet, but it wasn't entirely false either. I had been in correspondence with several international companies about consulting opportunities. The Dubai position was still in preliminary discussions, but suddenly, it felt like exactly the right move. Mom, this is ridiculous, Michael said, his lawyer voice kicking in. You can't just move to another country at your age. The logistics alone are already being handled, I said smoothly. The company is providing relocation assistance, including housing, healthcare, and transportation. It's quite a comprehensive package. James looked skeptical. What company? When did this happen? Meridian International, I said, pulling the name from my recent correspondence. And it's been in development for several weeks now. I just hadn't decided whether to accept until today. Today? Sarah echoed. What happened today that made you decide? I looked around at my family, at faces that showed surprise, confusion, and yes, a hint of panic. The same people who had been discussing my irrelevance an hour ago were now hanging on my every word. Well, I said thoughtfully, I realize that I don't really fit here anymore, that my presence has become more of an obligation than a joy for all of you. So I thought it was time to find somewhere I'm actually wanted. The silence stretched again. I could see my children exchanging glances, having a wordless conversation about how to handle this situation. Mom, Rebecca said carefully, if this is about today, if you felt left out? I smiled. Oh, honey, I wasn't left out. I was deliberately kept in the kitchen, where I wouldn't embarrass anyone or make the celebration about me. Sarah's face went pale. Mom, that's not— It's exactly what it was, I said calmly. And that's fine. You're all adults. You can celebrate however you want. But I'm also an adult, and I can choose where I want to spend my time. And I choose Dubai. Tyler had been listening with the focused attention children bring to adult drama they don't quite understand, but sense is important. Grandma L, he said, clutching his new helicopter. Dubai is really far away. My heart clenched, but my voice stayed steady. It is far away, sweetheart. But they have something called video calling now, and I'll be able to see you whenever you want. Plus, maybe someday you can come visit me. Dubai has some of the most amazing buildings in the world. When? Michael demanded. When would you leave? Soon, I said. My lease here is month to month, and most of my belongings are things that can be sold or donated. I don't need much for a new adventure. I pulled out my phone and showed them a photo I'd bookmarked earlier that week, a stunning view of the Dubai skyline at sunset. This is the view from my new apartment, I said. 32nd floor, infinity pool on the roof. It's quite beautiful. The photo had actually been from a real estate website, but sometimes the truth needed a little creative presentation. Patricia spoke up for the first time. Eleanor, this seems very sudden. Maybe you should take some time to think about it. I've been thinking about it for months, I said. Thinking about where I belong, where I'm valued, where my experience and knowledge are seen as assets rather than irritations. I could see the wheels turning in my children's heads. They were starting to realize that this wasn't just a dramatic gesture. This was a real plan, with real consequences. "Mom," Sarah said, her voice taking on a pleading tone. "Let's talk about this privately. We don't need to make any hasty decisions." "There's nothing hasty about it," I replied, "and there's nothing private to discuss. You've all made your feelings about my role in this family quite clear. I'm simply responding accordingly." I turned to address the other parents, most of whom were standing with their mouths slightly open, clearly not expecting to witness family drama at an 8-year-old's birthday party. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate Tyler's birthday," I said graciously. "He's a wonderful boy, and I hope you all had a lovely time." Then I turned back to my family. "I'll be in touch about the details of my move. Tyler, sweetheart, I love you very much, and I'll call you soon to tell you all about my new adventure." I kissed my grandson's forehead, nodded politely to the adults, and walked toward the house. "Mom, wait," Sarah called after me. "You can't just drop this bombshell and leave." I paused at the sliding glass door and turned back. "Why not? You've all proven quite capable of having family discussions without me. I'm sure you'll manage this one just fine, too." And with that, I walked through the house, collected my purse, and drove home, leaving behind a birthday party full of people finally, truly paying attention to every word Eleanor Hayes had to say. The phone started ringing before I'd even gotten home. Sarah called 3 times during my 10-minute drive. I let it go to voicemail each time. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I had 7 missed calls and 12 text messages. I poured myself a glass of wine, the good bottle of Cabernet I'd been saving for a special occasion, and settled into my favorite armchair to read the messages. Each one was more panicked than the last. From Sarah, "Mom, please call me. We need to talk about this Dubai thing." From Michael, "This is insane. You can't just move to another country without discussing it with us first." From Rebecca, "Mom, I think you're having some kind of crisis. Maybe we should make an appointment with Dr. Peterson." From James, "What consulting company? I couldn't find any information about this job online." That last one made me smile. Of course James had immediately started researching. He was his mother's son, after all. I ignored them all and opened my laptop instead. If I was going to do this, and suddenly, I was absolutely certain that I was, then I needed to do it properly. I pulled up my email correspondence with Meridian International. 3 weeks ago, I'd responded to a LinkedIn posting about consulting opportunities for experienced professionals willing to relocate internationally. The initial conversation had been promising, but I'd put it on the back burner while I tried to navigate the increasingly difficult waters of my family relationships. Now, I drafted a new email. "Dear Ms. Al-Rashid, thank you for your patience regarding the Dubai position we discussed. I'm writing to inform you that I'm ready to move forward with the opportunity. When would be convenient for a formal interview? I'm prepared to relocate within the next 4-6 weeks, if that timeline works with your needs. Looking forward to hearing from you. Best regards, Eleanor Hayes." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. My phone rang again. This time it was Rebecca. I decided to answer. "Mom, thank God. Listen, I've been thinking about what happened today." "Have you?" I interrupted. "That's interesting because for the past few months, I've been getting the distinct impression that none of you think very much at all." "That's not fair. We love you, you know that." "Do I? Because I have to tell you, Rebecca, love that comes with conditions and limitations doesn't feel much like love to me." There was a pause. "What do you mean?" "I mean love that requires me to stay in the kitchen during family celebrations. Love that excludes me from group chats and family trips. Love that treats my opinions like the ramblings of someone who's lost her mind." Another pause. Longer this time. "Mom, how much did you hear today?" So she remembered the conversation by the window. "Good. Enough," I said simply. "We didn't mean You meant every word, I said calmly. And that's fine. You're entitled to your feelings, but I'm entitled to mine too. And I'm entitled to make choices based on those feelings. But Dubai, Mom, that's so extreme. Can't we just talk about this? Work things out? What would you like to work out exactly? Would you like to work out a way to include me in family decisions? A way to value my contributions? A way to treat me like a person instead of a problem to be managed? Silence. Because if that's what you want to work out, I continued, then you've had months to do it. Years, actually. But instead, you've worked out elaborate ways to avoid me, exclude me, and minimize me. We never meant to make you feel that way. Intent doesn't matter much when the impact is so clear, does it? I could hear her crying softly on the other end of the line. Mom, please, don't move to Dubai. We need you here. Do you? Because earlier today your husband said I don't fit anymore. Michael said I'm not thinking clearly. James suggested you should all have celebrations without me. And Sarah... I paused, the memory still stinging. Sarah said having me around prevents everyone else from actually relaxing and having fun. We were just venting. Everyone says things they don't mean when they're frustrated. Were you frustrated, Rebecca? What exactly had I done to frustrate you? I washed dishes. I prepared food. I stayed out of the way. What about that was frustrating? She had no answer for that. The truth is, I continued, you weren't frustrated with anything I'd done. You were frustrated with my existence, with having to acknowledge that I'm still here, still part of this family, still someone whose feelings matter. That's not true, isn't it? Then why was it so much more relaxing when I was occupied with something? Why would Tyler's friends think I'm weird for talking about interest rates? Why would my presence at his school events be embarrassing? I could hear her husband in the background, asking what was happening. She shushed him. Mom, I'm sorry. We're all sorry. Can't we just start over? Start over, I repeated. Interesting phrase. Because starting over implies that both parties acknowledge something went wrong and want to fix it. But you're not acknowledging that anything went wrong, are you? You're just sorry that I heard about it. My laptop chimed with a new email notification. My heart jumped when I saw the sender, Nadia Al-Rashid, from Meridian International. Dear Ms. Hayes, what excellent timing. We were just discussing the need to expedite our hiring process for this position. Would you be available for a video interview tomorrow afternoon? Dubai time. I believe that would be 8 a.m. your time. If you're truly prepared to relocate within 4-6 weeks, I think we can make this work very smoothly. Best regards, Nadia Al-Rashid, Director of Cultural Development, Meridian International, tomorrow morning. A real interview for a real position in Dubai. Mom, are you there? Rebecca's voice brought me back to the phone call. Yes, I'm here. And tomorrow morning at 8, I have a job interview. For the Dubai position? You're serious about this. Completely serious. What about Tyler? What about all of us? What about you? You've made it quite clear that my presence in your lives is more burden than blessing. So I'm removing the burden. But Tyler loves you. You can't just abandon him. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm moving to a place where I'll be valued and respected. Tyler can visit me, or I can visit him. Modern technology makes these things quite manageable. And if we do better? If we include you more? I thought about that for a moment. It was the question I'd been hoping one of them would ask. And now that Rebecca had asked it, I realized something important. It was too late. Rebecca, I said gently, if you have to consciously decide to include me more, then I'm not really included, am I? I'm just being accommodated, like a dietary restriction or a mobility issue. Something to be worked around. That's not how it would be. It's exactly how it would be. Because the fundamental problem isn't that you don't include me enough. It's that you don't want to include me at all. And I can't force you to want me here. I could hear her crying harder now. I do want you here, Mom. I know it doesn't seem like it, but I do. Then why did you laugh when your husband called me weird? Why did you agree that I make everything about me? Why did you say you've heard all my stories 1,000 times? She had no answer. I'll tell you why, I said. Because somewhere along the way, I stopped being your mother and became your responsibility, and nobody likes their responsibilities. They tolerate them. I looked at the Dubai skyline photo still open on my laptop screen. 32nd floor, infinity pool, a place where someone wanted my seasoned perspective on life. I'm tired of being tolerated, Rebecca. I want to be wanted, and if I can't be wanted here, then I'll go somewhere I can be. Mom, I have to go prepare for my interview now. Tell the others that I'll be in touch about my moving timeline once I know more details. Please don't do this. I love you, sweetheart. All of you. That's exactly why I'm doing this. I hung up and turned off my phone. Then I opened a new document on my laptop and began preparing for the most important job interview of my life. I was up at 5 a.m., nervous energy coursing through my veins. The video interview was scheduled for 8 a.m. Chicago time, which meant 5 p.m. in Dubai. I'd researched everything I could about Meridian International, the luxury resort industry in Dubai, and cultural consulting in the Middle East. At 7:45, I was sitting at my dining room table with my laptop positioned perfectly, wearing my best blazer and practicing my talking points one last time. I'd arranged the background carefully, my bookshelf visible behind me, showing the travel guides and business books that proved I was serious about this career change. At exactly 8 hours, my laptop chimed with an incoming video call. Good morning, Ms. Hayes. Or should I say good evening from Dubai? Nadia Al-Rashid was a striking woman who appeared to be in her 40s with warm brown eyes and an infectious smile. Behind her, I could see floor-to-ceiling windows, showcasing the Dubai skyline I'd been admiring in photos. Good evening, Ms. Al-Rashid. Thank you so much for making time for this conversation. Please, call me Nadia. I have to say, your timing couldn't be more perfect. We've been searching for someone with exactly your background for several months now. My background? Corporate hospitality management, extensive travel experience, and what I like to call life wisdom. Our clientele at Meridian consists largely of high-net-worth individuals and families, many of them American and European. They're looking for authentic experiences, but they also want someone who can bridge cultural gaps and help them navigate expectations. She pulled up what looked like my LinkedIn profile on her screen. Your resume is impressive. 25 years in hotel management, including 5 years as regional director for the luxury hotel group. Fluent in English, French, and Spanish. Extensive travel throughout Europe, Asia, and South America. And according to your LinkedIn, you've been quite active in community organizations since your retirement. I have. I believe in staying engaged and continuing to learn. That's exactly the attitude we're looking for. Now I have to ask, and please forgive the directness, but you're 73 years old. This position involves significant travel throughout the Middle East, long hours during peak seasons, and adapting to a completely different cultural environment. Are you confident you're up for that challenge? For a moment, I flashed back to Michael's comments about my age, to Jessica's concerns about my driving, to the family's assumption that I was too frail for a beach vacation in Cabo. Then I straightened my shoulders and looked directly into the camera. Nadia, I ran a half marathon last year. I learned to use cryptocurrency to diversify my investment portfolio. I started a travel blog that has over 50,000 followers. And just yesterday, I made one of the most difficult decisions of my life based on a clear-eyed assessment of my circumstances and my options. I paused, letting that sink in. Age is just a number. What matters is attitude, adaptability, and the willingness to embrace new challenges. I've spent the last few years being told by my family that I should slow down, settle down, and accept a diminished role in life, but I refuse to do that. I'm not done growing, learning, or contributing. Nadia's smile widened. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Tell me, what draws you specifically to Dubai? And to this position? Honestly, I've reached a point in my life where I need to prove something. To myself and to others. I need to prove that experience and wisdom are assets, not liabilities. That being 73 doesn't mean being irrelevant. I took a breath, choosing my words carefully. Dubai represents everything I want in this next chapter of my life. It's a place that honors tradition while embracing innovation. It's a cosmopolitan environment where different cultures meet and blend. And it's a place that seems to value what I have to offer, rather than seeing my age as a limitation. And your family, how do they feel about this potential move? I almost laughed at the timing of that question. They're surprised, but they're also beginning to understand that I'm not the same person I was 10 years ago, or even 1 year ago. I'm not content to be sidelined anymore. Excellent. Now, let me tell you more about what this position would entail. For the next 30 minutes, Nadia walked me through the details. I would be based at their flagship resort in Dubai, but would travel to their properties in Abu Dhabi, Qatar, and Oman. My role would involve developing cultural orientation programs for guests, training staff on cross-cultural communication, and serving as a liaison for high-profile American and European clients who needed extra assistance navigating Middle Eastern customs and expectations. The salary was generous, more than I'd made in my last corporate role. The benefits included housing in a luxury apartment complex, comprehensive health care, a car and driver, and 4 weeks of annual leave that I could use to travel anywhere in the world. There's one more thing, Nadia said as we neared the end of our conversation. This position comes with a significant amount of autonomy and respect. You'd be working directly with our executive team. Your input would be valued in strategic decisions, and frankly, many of our clients would specifically request to work with you because of your experience and perspective. Valued, respected, requested. When was the last time anyone had used those words to describe my role in anything? When would you need an answer? I asked. Well, she said, consulting something off-screen. I have to be honest with you, Eleanor. This interview was supposed to be the first of several rounds, but I'm prepared to offer you the position right now if you're interested. My heart skipped a beat. Right now? You're exactly what we've been looking for. Your experience speaks for itself. Your attitude is perfect, and frankly, your willingness to make this move at this stage of your life tells me everything I need to know about your character and determination. I thought about my family, probably still texting each other frantically about my crisis and my irrational decision. I thought about Tyler's face when he'd asked why I was in the kitchen instead of watching the magic show. I thought about all the conversations that happened without me, all the decisions made around me rather than with me. Then I thought about this woman on my screen, offering me respect, autonomy, and the chance to prove that the 73 was just getting started, not winding down. I accept, I said without hesitation. Nadia clapped her hands together. Wonderful. Welcome to Meridian International, Eleanor. I'll have our relocation specialist contact you this afternoon to begin the immigration and moving process. How soon can you be here? How soon do you need me? Could you manage 4 weeks from today? 4 weeks. In 4 weeks, I could be starting over in one of the most dynamic cities in the world, working for people who wanted my experience rather than tolerating my presence. 4 weeks is perfect, I said. Excellent. You're going to love it here, Eleanor. Dubai is a city that rewards bold moves and fresh perspectives. I have a feeling you're going to fit right in. After we ended the call, I sat in my dining room for a long moment, staring at the black screen of my laptop. I had just accepted a job on the other side of the world. I was moving to Dubai in 1 month. The reality of it should have been terrifying. Instead, I felt more alive than I had in years. My phone, which I'd turned back on after the interview, immediately started buzzing with notifications. 23 missed calls, 47 text messages. I scrolled through them quickly. The tone had shifted from panic to anger to pleading, and back to anger again, from Michael. "This is emotional blackmail, Mom. You can't manipulate us like this." From Sarah. "I talked to Dr. Peterson. He said sudden major life changes can be a sign of depression in seniors." From James. "I called the company. The receptionist wouldn't confirm your employment." From Rebecca. "Please just come to dinner tonight. Let's talk this through rationally." I deleted them all without responding and instead opened a new document. If I was doing this, I was going to do it properly. I needed lists, things to sell, things to ship, things to donate. I needed to research Dubai neighborhoods, international banking, expat communities. But first I called Tyler. Sarah answered on the second ring. "Mom, thank God you're calling back. We've all been... I'd like to speak to Tyler, please." "Mom, we really need to talk about this Dubai situation. I've been researching it and I think you're being scammed. These international job offers are often..." "Sarah, I've just accepted the position. I start in 4 weeks. Now please put Tyler on the phone." A long pause. "You're serious?" "Completely serious. Mom, this is insane. You can't just..." "Tyler, please." Another pause. Then Tyler's voice. "Grandma Elle? Mom says you're moving to Dubai. Is that true?" "It is true, sweetheart. I got a job there helping people from America feel comfortable when they visit. It's going to be quite an adventure. But you'll be so far away." My heart clenched, but I kept my voice steady. "I will be far away. But Tyler, do you know what's wonderful about living in different places? It means we'll have even more interesting things to talk about when we video chat. I'll be able to show you camels and sand dunes and buildings so tall, they touch the clouds." "Really? Really? And maybe someday, when you're a little older, you can come visit me. Would you like that?" "That would be so cool. Can I ride a camel?" I laughed, and it felt genuine for the first time in months. "I don't see why not." "Tyler, give me the phone back," I heard Sarah say in the background. "I have to go now, sweetheart," I told Tyler. "But I'll call you tomorrow and tell you more about my new job, okay?" "Okay. I love you, Grandma Elle." "I love you too, Tyler. So very much." Sarah came back on the line. "Mom, please think about this. Don't make decisions when you're upset." "I'm not upset, Sarah. I'm excited. For the first time in a very long time, I'm excited about my future. But what about us? What about the family?" I looked around my house, at the family photos covering every surface, at the guest room I'd kept ready for visits that came less and less frequently, at the dining room table that hadn't hosted a family dinner in over a year. "The family will be fine," I said. "You've all made it quite clear that you function better without me anyway. Now you'll be able to prove it." The moving process was surprisingly smooth, largely because I discovered I had less attachment to my possessions than I'd expected. 25 years of accumulating things suddenly seemed exhausting rather than comforting. I kept my jewelry, my photo albums, my favorite books, and my travel souvenirs. Everything else went to charity, online sales, or the garbage. It was liberating in a way I hadn't anticipated. My family's reactions varied day by day. Some days they tried anger, accusing me of being selfish, manipulative, or mentally unstable. Other days they tried guilt, reminding me of all the family events I'd miss, all the ways they needed me, all the reasons I should stay. But the most telling reaction came during week 2, when Rebecca called to inform me that they'd decided to throw me a going-away party. "We thought it would be nice," she said, "to celebrate your new adventure and give everyone a chance to say goodbye properly." "That's thoughtful," I said carefully. "What did you have in mind?" "Well, we were thinking dinner at Sarah's house. Just family. Nothing fancy, but we could make your favorite foods and maybe look through some old photo albums." "Just family," I repeated. Right. I mean, it's not like we need to invite a bunch of people you won't see again anyway. There it was. Even my going-away party would be designed around their comfort rather than mine. A quiet family dinner where they could manage the narrative, control the emotions, and avoid any awkward explanations to friends or extended family about why Grandma Eleanor was moving to Dubai. "Thank you for the offer," I said, "but I think I'll pass." "Pass? Mom, it's your going-away party, is it? Because it sounds like it's your way of saying goodbye without having to actually acknowledge what's happening, or why." "That's not fair, isn't it? Rebecca, when was the last time this family threw me a party that was actually about celebrating me? Not a birthday obligation, not a holiday duty, but an actual celebration of who I am and what I've accomplished." Silence. "I can't think of one either," I said. "So no, I don't need a farewell dinner where everyone sits around feeling awkward about the fact that I'm leaving. If you want to say goodbye, you can say it now. Mom, goodbye, Rebecca. I love you." I hung up and went back to packing. The truth was I had already planned my own going-away celebration. I'd invited 6 friends from my book club, 3 former colleagues, my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, and my travel blog readers who lived in the Chicago area. We were meeting at my favorite restaurant for dinner, and then going to my apartment for dessert and champagne. These were people who knew me as Eleanor the world traveler, Eleanor the successful executive, Eleanor the woman who had reinvented herself multiple times and wasn't afraid to do it again. They were excited about my move, full of questions about Dubai, and eager to live vicariously through my adventure. Not one of them had suggested I was too old, too fragile, or making a mistake. During week 3, something interesting happened. My children started calling more frequently, but the tone of the conversations changed. Instead of trying to talk me out of leaving, they started asking practical questions. Michael wanted to know about my finances. I assured him they were in excellent order. Sarah asked about my apartment. I told her it was already rented to a lovely young couple starting in January. James inquired about my health care. I explained that Meridian provided comprehensive international coverage. It was Rebecca who finally asked the question they were all thinking. "Mom, what if this doesn't work out? What if you want to come back?" "Then I'll come back," I said simply. "But Rebecca, I need you to understand something. If I do come back, it won't be to the same situation I'm leaving. It won't be to being managed and marginalized and treated like a burden. If I come back, it will be as someone who has proven she can build a new life from scratch at 73. We never treated you like a burden, didn't you? Then why did you all seem so relieved when I was occupied in the kitchen at Tyler's party? Why did James suggest having celebrations without me? Why did Michael say I wasn't thinking clearly anymore?" A long pause. "You heard all of that." "I heard all of that. We were wrong," she said quietly. "We were frustrated and tired, and we said things we shouldn't have said. I appreciate you saying that. But Rebecca, the problem isn't that you said those things. The problem is that you felt them, and until you figure out why you felt them, nothing will really change." "Maybe we need family therapy." I almost smiled. "Maybe you do. But I don't need therapy to know my worth. I need adventure, challenge, and the respect I've earned after 73 years of living." During my final week, Tyler called me every day. Sarah had clearly coached him on some level, because his questions were very specific and mature for an 8-year-old. "Grandma L, will you be safe there?" "Very safe, sweetheart. Dubai is one of the safest cities in the world." "Will you make friends?" "I'm sure I will. I'm good at making friends." "Will you come back for my birthday next year?" That one was harder. "I don't know yet, Tyler. But if I can't come back, maybe you and your parents can come visit me. Would you like that?" "Yes!" Mom said Dubai has the tallest building in the world. It does. It's called the Burj Khalifa, and from the top, you can see the whole city and the ocean. Can we go to the top when I visit? Absolutely. On my last night in Chicago, I sat in my empty apartment with a bottle of wine and my laptop, writing a blog post for my followers. Tomorrow, I board a plane to Dubai to start the next chapter of my life. Some of you have asked if I'm scared. The honest answer is yes, but it's a good kind of scared. It's the scared you feel before a first date, before a job interview, before any new beginning that matters. I'm 73 years old, and I'm starting over, not because I have to, but because I choose to. Because I refuse to accept that my best years are behind me, or that my value decreases with each birthday. To my readers who are facing their own crossroads, age is not a limitation unless you make it one. Experience is not outdated unless you let it become so. And it's never too late to choose yourself. Next week, I'll be writing to you from my new home in Dubai. I can't wait to share that adventure with you. Until then, remember, every ending is just a new beginning in disguise. Love and adventures. Eleanor I posted it at midnight and then went to bed in my empty apartment for the last time. The flight from Chicago to Dubai, with a layover in London, gave me 16 hours to think. Not about whether I was making the right decision. I was past that point. But about what I wanted this new life to look like. I had spent so much energy over the past month defending my choice to leave that I hadn't spent enough time envisioning what I was moving toward. Now, somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean, I finally let myself dream. I wanted to wake up every morning with purpose. I wanted colleagues who valued my input. I wanted to explore a new culture without being told I was too old to understand. I wanted to travel to places I'd only read about. I wanted to prove, once and for all, that 73 was not the beginning of the end. It was the beginning of everything I'd been too responsible to do when I was younger. When the plane began its descent into Dubai, I pressed my face to the window like a child seeing snow for the first time. The city sprawled below me like something from a science fiction movie. Gleaming skyscrapers rising from golden desert. Artificial islands shaped like palm trees. Highways that curved through the landscape like silver ribbons. First time? Asked the businessman sitting next to me. He'd been kind during the flight, sharing his travel magazines and making polite conversation. First time living here, I corrected. I'm starting a new job. An expat! Welcome to Dubai. You'll love it here. The city has a way of making everyone feel like they can reinvent themselves. Reinvent myself. Yes, that was exactly what I was doing. Nadia had arranged for a driver to meet me at the airport. As I emerged from customs, I saw a man holding a sign with my name. Not Mrs. Hayes or Eleanor Hayes, but Ms. Eleanor Hayes, Meridian International Cultural Consultant. Cultural Consultant. I liked the sound of that. The drive from the airport to my new apartment was like touring a different planet. We passed shopping malls the size of small cities, hotels that looked like sailing ships and rainbow waves, and construction cranes everywhere, building tomorrow's skyline today. Ms. Hayes, my driver Ahmed said in perfect English, Ms. Al-Rashid asked me to take a small detour to show you something special. We turned onto a street that ran parallel to the beach, and suddenly the Persian Gulf stretched out to my right, sapphire blue and dotted with white sailboats. To my left rose the Burj Al Arab, the 7-star hotel shaped like a giant sail. She thought you might like to see this on your first day, Ahmed said. Welcome to Dubai, Ms. Hayes. My apartment was on the 32nd floor of a gleaming tower in Dubai Marina. When Ahmed opened the door and I stepped inside, I actually gasped. The entire far wall was glass, offering an unobstructed view of the marina below and the Gulf beyond. The apartment was furnished in modern elegance. Clean lines, neutral colors, and touches of gold that caught the afternoon light. There was a full kitchen, a spacious living area, a beautiful bedroom, and a study that looked out over the city. On the dining table, I found a welcome basket from Meridian International, local dates and nuts, a bottle of champagne, flowers, and a handwritten note from Nadia, Eleanor, welcome home. Take today and tomorrow to settle in and recover from your journey. I'll pick you up on Thursday at 9 a.m. for your first day. I think you're going to love what we have planned. The building concierge has all the details about local services, transportation, and getting settled. Don't hesitate to call if you need anything. So excited to have you on the team. Nadia and I opened the champagne, poured myself a glass, and stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the sun set over my new city. The sky turned pink, then orange, then deep purple, and the lights of Dubai began twinkling like earthbound stars. My phone buzzed with a text message from Tyler. "Did you make it to Dubai? Can you see the tall buildings? I took a photo of the view from my window and sent it back. I made it safely. And yes, I can see the tall buildings. This one is from my living room window. I love you, sweetheart." His response was immediate. "Wow, that's so cool. Mom wants to talk to you." A few seconds later, my phone rang. "Mom?" Sarah's voice was small and uncertain. "You're really there?" "I'm really here. How was the flight? Are you okay? Is the apartment nice?" For the first time in months, she sounded like she actually cared about the answers. "The flight was long but comfortable. I'm fine, tired but excited. And Sarah, the apartment is beautiful. Better than I could have imagined. That's good. I'm glad." We talked for a few more minutes about practical things. The time difference, the weather, how to use international calling. But underneath the logistics, I could hear something different in her voice. Not the patronizing tone I'd grown accustomed to, but something that sounded like, "Respect, Mom," she said as we were wrapping up the call. "I want you to know that Tyler has been telling everyone at school that his grandmother moved to Dubai for work. He's really proud of you." "He should be proud of me," I said. "I'm pretty proud of me, too." After we hung up, I sat on my balcony for a long time, watching the lights of the marina reflect in the water. Sarah's words had touched something deep inside me. Not just the apology, but the recognition. For the first time in years, one of my children had seen me clearly. But even more importantly, I had seen myself clearly. The woman sitting on this balcony in Dubai was not the same woman who had stood in Sarah's kitchen 6 months ago, washing dishes while her family celebrated without her. That woman had been diminished, made smaller, by years of being treated as less than she was. This woman, this Eleanor, was expansive again. She was curious, adventurous, and confident in her own worth. She had work that mattered, colleagues who respected her, and a future full of possibilities. I opened my laptop and began writing my weekly blog post. "Hello, dear readers. Today marks 1 month since I moved to Dubai, and I've been reflecting on what it means to reclaim your life at 73. When I first announced this move, many people asked if I was running away from something. The honest answer is yes, but not in the way they meant. I wasn't running away from problems or responsibilities. I was running away from a version of myself that had become too small. For years, I had allowed other people's perceptions of my age, my relevance, and my capabilities to become my reality. I had accepted being sidelined, managed, and diminished because it seemed easier than fighting for respect. But here's what I've learned in Dubai. Respect isn't something you have to fight for when you're in the right environment. It's something you naturally receive when you're surrounded by people who value experience, wisdom, and expertise. My work here is challenging and meaningful. My colleagues see my age as an asset, not a liability. My clients specifically request me because of my decades of experience, not despite them. This morning, I helped mediate a business negotiation worth several $1,000,000. This afternoon, I'm leading a workshop on cross-cultural communication for resort staff. Tonight, I'm having dinner with friends I've made here. Other expats who believe that your 70s are for adventure, not hibernation. I share this not to boast, but to remind anyone reading this who has been made to feel less than they are You have choices. You can accept the limitations others place on you, or you can go find people who recognize your true worth. It's never too late to choose yourself. Next week, I'll be traveling to Abu Dhabi for a client consultation, and I can't wait to share that adventure with you. Until then, keep dreaming big. Love and adventures, Eleanor. November passed in a blur of work achievements and personal growth. I had successfully completed my probation period at Meridian and received a glowing review from Nadia. 3 different clients had specifically requested to work with me again on future visits. The resort was already discussing expanding the cultural consulting program and potentially having me train consultants for their other properties. My hiking group had tackled increasingly challenging trails, including a multi-day expedition through the empty quarter desert. My Arabic was improving rapidly. I could now handle basic business conversations and was beginning to understand the subtle cultural nuances that my language teacher, Fatima, wove into our lessons. Most surprisingly, I had become something of a minor celebrity in Dubai's expat community. My travel blog had gained thousands of new followers, and I'd been invited to speak at 3 different events about reinvention in retirement. But as December approached, the question of Christmas loomed larger in my mind. My family's invitations had become more frequent and more thoughtful. Michael had called to tell me about a legal case he was working on, asking for my opinion on cross-cultural business practices. The first time he'd sought my professional input in years. Rebecca had sent photos from her daughter's graduation, along with a note saying, "Wish you could have been here, but we thought you'd want to see how proud Hannah looked." James had surprised me most of all by sending a detailed business plan for his startup, asking if I'd review it and provide feedback. "I keep thinking about all the international business experience you have that I've never really tapped into," he'd written. "Would you be willing to look this over with fresh eyes?" And Tyler called every few days, full of questions about Dubai and stories about school. But increasingly, his questions included phrases like, "When you come home for Christmas," as if it were a foregone conclusion. The truth was, part of me wanted to go, not because I missed my old life, but because I wanted to share my new one. I wanted them to see the confident, energized version of myself that I had rediscovered here. I wanted to answer their questions about Dubai in person, to show them photos of my adventures, to prove that their old assumptions about my limitations had been wrong. But I also knew that going back, even for a visit, was complicated. Would they treat this as a vacation from my real life in Dubai? Or would they see it as evidence that I was ready to come home permanently? Would they respect the boundaries I'd established? Or would they see my presence as an opportunity to renegotiate our relationship? The decision was made for me in early December, when I received a phone call that changed everything. "Eleanor, this is Margaret Chen, from Chicago." It took me a moment to place the voice. Mrs. Chen from my old neighborhood, but she sounded shaken. "Margaret, how are you? Is everything all right?" "Eleanor, I'm calling about Tyler. He's in the hospital." My heart stopped. "What happened?" "He was hit by a car while riding his bike. Sarah asked me to call you because she's too upset to talk right now." "How bad is it?" "He's stable, but he has a broken leg and some internal injuries." "He's going to be okay, Eleanor, but it's going to be a long recovery." I was already mentally calculating flight times before she finished explaining the details. "Which hospital?" "I'll be on the next flight." "Eleanor, wait. Sarah wanted me to tell you that you don't need to come. She knows you have your job and your new life, and she doesn't want you to feel obligated." "Margaret," I interrupted. "Tyler is my grandson. Of course I'm coming." I hung up and immediately called Nadia. "Eleanor, I wasn't expecting to hear from you today. How are you?" "Nadia, I need to take emergency leave. My grandson has been in an accident, and I need to fly to Chicago immediately." "Of course. Take as much time as you need. Is there anything we can do to help?" "Actually, yes. Can you help me get on the next flight to Chicago? I don't care about the cost. Consider it done. I'll have our travel coordinator call you within the hour with options. 2 hours later, I was packed and heading to the airport. The next available flight would get me to Chicago 24 hours after Margaret's call. The longest 24 hours of my life. During the flight, I had time to think about what this meant. I was going back to Chicago, but not because I'd failed in Dubai or because I was homesick. I was going back because my family needed me. And for the first time in years, I was returning from a position of strength rather than weakness. When the plane touched down at O'Hare, I realized I felt like a visitor to my old city rather than someone coming home. Chicago looked smaller somehow, more familiar, but less important than it had 6 months ago. Sarah was waiting for me at the hospital. When she saw me walking down the corridor, she burst into tears and ran toward me. "Mom, you came." "Of course I came." I held her while she cried, and for the first time in years, it felt like she needed me rather than tolerated me. "He keeps asking for you," she said when she'd composed herself. "He wants to tell you about the helicopter you gave him. He was flying it in the park when the accident happened." My heart clenched with guilt. But Sarah seemed to read my thoughts. "It wasn't the helicopter's fault, Mom. A driver ran a red light. Tyler was exactly where he was supposed to be." Tyler looked so small in the hospital bed, but his face lit up when he saw me. "Grandma Elle, you came back from Dubai. I came to see you, sweetheart. How are you feeling?" "My leg hurts, but the doctor said it's going to heal really good. And guess what? I get to keep the x-ray picture. Do you want to see my leg bones?" For the next hour, I listened to Tyler tell me about the accident, the ambulance ride, the hospital food, and his plans for what he was going to do during his recovery. His resilience amazed me. But what amazed me even more was how the entire family seemed to orbit around my presence. Michael appeared with coffee for everyone, asking if I needed anything, and updating me on Tyler's medical team. Rebecca arrived with flowers and immediately started asking me questions about Dubai, seeming genuinely interested in the answers. James came straight from the airport. He'd cut short a business trip when he heard about the accident. "Mom," he said, pulling me aside. "Thank you for coming. I know this interrupts your new life, but Tyler's been asking for you constantly." "James, Tyler is my grandson. My life in Dubai is wonderful, but it's not more important than family." "I know, but we haven't exactly given you reason to prioritize us lately." That evening, as I sat beside Tyler's hospital bed while he slept, Sarah joined me. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Are you happy you came back?" "Even for this?" I looked at my grandson, peaceful in sleep despite his injuries, then at my daughter, who looked exhausted but no longer distant. "Yes," I said. "I'm happy I came back. But Sarah, I want you to understand something important. I came back because I chose to, not because I had to. And that makes all the difference." "What do you mean?" 6 months ago, if Tyler had been in an accident, you would have called me out of obligation, and I would have come out of duty. It would have been the right thing to do, but it wouldn't have felt like love. It would have felt like responsibility." She nodded slowly. "But now, you called me because you wanted me here, and I came because I wanted to be here. That's love, not obligation." "I did want you here," she said quietly. "Not just because Tyler was asking for you, but because when something scary happens, I want my mom." Those words might have been the most beautiful thing any of my children had ever said to me. I stayed in Chicago for 2 weeks, and during that time something fundamental shifted in my family's dynamics. It started with small things. When I mentioned that I was staying at a hotel, Michael immediately offered his guest room. When I politely declined, explaining that I preferred having my own space and didn't want to impose, he didn't argue or insist. Instead, he said, "I understand, but please let us know if there's anything we can do to make your stay more comfortable." The difference was subtle but profound. He was respecting my choice, rather than trying to override it. The same pattern repeated itself throughout my visit. When Rebecca invited me to dinner, she asked what kind of food I was in the mood for, instead of just assuming I'd want her usual chicken casserole. When Sarah needed help with Tyler's care, she asked if I was available rather than expecting me to automatically take on the responsibilities. Most remarkably, they began asking me about Dubai, not with the patronizing curiosity they might show for a child's imaginary game, but with genuine interest in my professional and personal experiences. "Mom," James said during one of our hospital visits, "I've been thinking about what you said in your business plan review, about the importance of cultural adaptability in international markets. How has living in Dubai changed your perspective on that?" For the next 30 minutes, we had the kind of substantive professional conversation that I'd been craving for years. James took notes, asked follow-up questions, and treated my insights with the respect they deserved. Rebecca was curious about the healthcare system in the UAE, particularly how it compared to the American system. As a doctor, she was genuinely interested in my experiences with Dubai's medical infrastructure and international patient services. "It sounds incredibly advanced," she said after I'd described the seamless integration of technology and personal care I'd observed. "I'd love to visit sometime, maybe attend one of their medical conferences." Even Tyler, despite his injuries, was full of questions about my life in Dubai. But his questions were different now, too. Instead of just wanting to hear about exciting adventures, he was curious about the details of my daily life. "Grandma Elle, do you have friends there? Do you go to restaurants? Do you have a favorite place to sit in your apartment?" These weren't the questions of a child indulging an adult's fantasy. These were the questions of someone who recognized that I had built a real, full life somewhere else. The most significant conversation happened during my second week, when Tyler was finally well enough to go home from the hospital. Sarah asked if I'd like to stay at her house for my remaining days in Chicago, to help with Tyler's care and spend more time together. "I appreciate the offer," I said, "but I think I'll stick with the hotel. It gives me space to work. I have some client consultations I need to handle remotely, and it means I can visit on your schedule rather than being underfoot all the time." Instead of arguing or looking hurt, Sarah smiled. "That makes sense. But would you like to come for dinner tomorrow night? I was thinking of making that Moroccan chicken dish you used to love, and Tyler's been asking if you could show him some of your Dubai photos." It was a small thing, but it represented a massive change. She was inviting me into their lives rather than assuming I would simply insert myself into them. That dinner was one of the most pleasant family meals I'd had in years. Tyler was propped up on the couch with his leg elevated, but he was animated and engaged, asking me to show him specific photos from my hiking adventures and my work at the resort. "Grandma Elle, will you take me to that desert place when I visit you?" "When you visit me," I repeated. "Not if, but when." "Yeah, Mom said maybe this summer, if you want us to come." I looked at Sarah, who nodded. "We've been talking about it as a family, not just Tyler, but all of us. We'd like to see your new life, if you'd be open to having visitors." "I would love that," I said, and meant it completely. Later that evening, after Tyler had gone to bed, Sarah and I sat in her kitchen with cups of tea, an echo of countless conversations we'd had when she was younger, but with a completely different dynamic. "Mom, I want to apologize again for how we treated you before you left." "Sarah, you've already apologized. You don't need to keep—" "No, I do, because I'm starting to understand what we really did to you, and it's worse than I thought." She wrapped her hands around her mug, staring into the tea as she spoke. "We didn't just exclude you from things or dismiss your opinions. We erased you as a person. We turned you into a function. The grandmother who babysits, the mother who helps with problems, the woman who washes dishes at parties." I felt my throat tighten. "Yes," I said quietly. "That's exactly what it felt like." And the worst part is that we did it so gradually. I don't think any of us realized it was happening. One day you were Mom, the woman who raised us, who had her own career and interests and opinions. The next day you were just a resource we could access when we needed something. When did you realize what had happened? Honestly, when Tyler got hurt, and my first instinct was to call you. Not because you're his grandmother and you'd want to know, but because I needed you to be here, handling things, making me feel better. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. But then I realized I didn't even know if you could come. I didn't know how important your job was, or whether you had commitments you couldn't break, or whether you'd even want to drop everything for us after how we'd treated you. But I did come. You did. But you came as Eleanor Hayes, the successful international consultant who chose to prioritize her grandson's crisis, not as Grandma Eleanor who had no choice but to show up when summoned. She paused, wiping away tears. Do you see the difference? I do, I said. And Sarah, that difference is everything. It's the difference between love and obligation, between choice and duty. I see that now. And I see why you had to leave for us to understand it. The next morning, I had breakfast with Michael and Rebecca before my flight back to Dubai. The conversation was comfortable and genuine. They asked about my work, shared updates about their own careers, and treated me like the accomplished professional I was, rather than the aging relative I'd become. As Michael drove me to the airport, he said something that surprised me. Mom, I have a confession. When you first announced you were moving to Dubai, I thought you were having some kind of breakdown. I actually called your doctor to ask if sudden major life changes were a sign of dementia. I laughed despite myself. What did he say? He said that sudden major life changes were usually a sign of clarity, not confusion. He said the Eleanor Hayes he knew was one of the smartest, most capable people he'd ever met, and if she was making a dramatic change, I should probably assume she had good reasons. Smart doctor. Yeah, I should have listened to him instead of assuming I knew better. At the airport, my children and Tyler, who was getting around remarkably well on crutches, came to see me off. It felt like a real goodbye, not the confused and angry departure I'd made 6 months earlier. Tyler hugged me carefully, mindful of his injuries. Grandma Elle, I can't wait to visit you in Dubai. Will you show me how to ride a camel? I'll do my best, sweetheart. Sarah kissed my cheek. Thank you for coming, and thank you for showing us who you really are. Thank you for finally being ready to see it. As my plane lifted off from O'Hare, I looked down at Chicago, the city where I'd spent most of my adult life, raised my children, and built my first career. It looked familiar and dear, but it no longer looked like home. Home was a 32nd floor apartment in Dubai Marina, where I had colleagues who respected me, work that challenged me, and a future full of possibilities. But now, for the first time in years, Chicago also looked like a place I could visit with joy instead of obligation, where I could be welcomed as myself instead of tolerated as a burden. I'm writing this from the balcony of my Dubai apartment, watching the sun set over the marina as I prepare for tomorrow's adventure. In the morning, I'll be flying to Muscat, Oman, to help establish a new cultural consulting program for Meridian's expansion property. There, it's been exactly 1 year since I walked out of Sarah's kitchen and announced my move to Dubai. 12 months since I decided to choose myself over the comfortable misery of being tolerated by people who should have loved me better. The woman writing this story is not the same woman who stood in that kitchen invisible and diminished. This Eleanor Hayes runs cultural consulting programs for 3 different resort properties. She speaks conversational Arabic and is learning Farsi. She has hiked through 4 different countries in the Middle East and is planning a solo photography expedition to Morocco next month. This Eleanor Hayes has been featured in 2 international magazines as an example of successful aging and reinvention after retirement. Her travel blog now has over 200,000 followers from around the world. She receives emails weekly from people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s who have been inspired to make bold changes in their own lives. But most importantly, this Eleanor Hayes is loved and respected by people who chose to love and respect her, rather than people who felt obligated to tolerate her. My family did visit me in Dubai last summer, just as Sarah had promised. All 4 of my children, their spouses, and their children spent 10 days exploring my new city and my new life. Tyler did get to ride a camel and loved every minute of it. Rebecca did attend a medical conference while she was here. James did extend his trip to explore business opportunities in the region. And Sarah spent an afternoon working alongside me at the resort, watching me facilitate a cross-cultural business meeting and seeing firsthand why Meridian values my expertise so highly. "Mom," she said as we walked through the marina that evening, "you're completely different here." "I'm not different," I corrected. "I'm myself. This is who I've always been. You just couldn't see it when I was trapped in the role you'd assigned me." "We really did trap you, didn't we?" "You did. But more importantly, I let you. I accepted being diminished because it seemed easier than fighting to be seen. What changed? I realized that being loved conditionally, being accepted only as a smaller version of myself, wasn't actually being loved at all." That conversation happened 6 months ago, and our relationship has continued to evolve. We video chat regularly now, but the conversations are between equals. They ask for my advice on everything from travel planning to investment strategies to parenting challenges. When they share their own achievements and struggles, they do so because they want my perspective, not because they're humoring an elderly relative. Tyler calls me every Sunday to tell me about his week and ask about mine. Last month, he announced to his class that his grandmother lives in Dubai and helps people from different countries understand each other. According to Sarah, his teacher was so impressed that she's considering inviting me to speak to the class via video call about international careers. The irony is not lost on me. By leaving my family, I became closer to them than I had been in years. But the most significant change is not in my relationships with others. It's in my relationship with myself. I no longer measure my worth by other people's approval or acceptance. I don't need my children to validate my choices or celebrate my achievements. I don't need anyone's permission to live boldly or dream big. I am Eleanor Hayes, consultant, adventurer, explorer of new possibilities. I am 74 years old, and I am just getting started. Tomorrow I fly to Oman to help launch a new program that could revolutionize how luxury resorts serve international guests. Next month, I'm speaking at a conference in London about cultural consulting in the hospitality industry. This summer, I'm taking a 3-week photography course in Morocco, followed by a hiking expedition in Nepal. And yes, I'm doing all of this at 74, because age, I've learned, is only a limitation if you accept it as one. To anyone reading this story who has been made to feel too old, too irrelevant, or too diminished to chase their dreams, you have choices. You can accept the small version of yourself that others are comfortable with, or you can go find people who appreciate the full-sized version of who you are. It's never too late to choose yourself. It's never too late to prove that your best years aren't behind you. They're just different than the years that came before. The kitchen exile is over. The real adventure has just begun. Final word count. Approximately 15,000 words, providing a 45-plus minute narration when read aloud at average speaking pace. Up, I explored my new neighborhood. The building was part of a complex that included shops, restaurants, a gym, a spa, and direct access to a marina where yachts bobbed gently in the evening breeze. Everything was clean, modern, and efficiently organized. I found a small grocery store and bought supplies for the next few days, marveling at the international selection. Foods from every corner of the world, all labeled in both Arabic and English. The clerk who checked me out welcomed me to Dubai and asked if I was visiting for business or pleasure. Both, I said, surprising myself with how true that felt. That night, I called Mrs. Chen, my neighbor back in Chicago, to let her know I'd arrived safely. "Eleanor," she exclaimed, "tell me everything. Is it wonderful?" I looked around my beautiful apartment, thought about the job waiting for me, remembered the feeling of being welcomed and valued instead of tolerated and managed. "It's perfect," I said. "It's absolutely perfect. And your family? Have you heard from them?" "A little. I think they're beginning to realize that I'm serious about this." "Good. Maybe now they'll understand what they were taking for granted." After we hung up, I sat on my new balcony with a cup of tea, watching the lights of the marina reflect in the dark water below. Tomorrow would be my first day at Meridian International. Tomorrow I would begin proving that Eleanor Hayes was far from finished. But tonight I was simply grateful. Grateful for the courage to leave. Grateful for the opportunity to start over. And grateful for the reminder that it's never too late to choose yourself.